more than welcome. Just contact me. And the next activity we're going to be doing is to be posting information about recycling in the lead up to National Recycling Day, which is in mid-November. With what Harvey was mentioning a moment ago, let me let you know that if you look in the chat, I posted information on 2 articles that concern deforestation and climate change, and the fact that those problems are in fact very much part of why we're experiencing coronavirus, and we've experienced other pandemics like SARS in the past. And according to the expert consensus, we can unfortunately expect more in the future if we don't change how human beings behave. It's basically destroying too much habitat and doing things with animals and coming into contact with animals in ways that people shouldn't. And then, of course, because we're a global society, it reaches everywhere. And here we are. So I found those articles very interesting on a big picture kind of basis. What we had in mind to first start discussing in connection with the environment and coronavirus is how has it affected what you're doing? What you're doing outside? What are any particular concerns that you might have? So we're just trying to open this up to a discussion right now.
Well, from our standpoint, I mean, Linda and I have been walking 5 or 6 miles a day. But in that process, much of it is zigzag in order to avoid getting too close to other people who are walking. So the number of times that we've had to cross the street because others are not being careful, or we're deliberately trying to avoid crowds, it has been difficult. And even trying to get to the Arboretum, we have to make reservations because they have a limit on the number of people that can be there.
Were you doing that much walking before this happened?
Well, we have a dog. So are we doing more than we were before?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
So that might be one of the strangely good things that are going on. As you know, for those of us who are trying to walk more, and I found myself also saying, you know, I got to get outside and do something and walk and move. It's been some kind of motivation to do something healthy, ironically.
Indeed.
You know, I don't know if it's environmental or what's going on, but I see more trees marked to be taken down because they're not surviving whatever is going on. They don't appear, some of them don't appear diseased. Some of them appear that with the lack of water this summer, they just did not get enough water for survival. But I see lots more trees than I usually do marked for coming down, which bothers me.
Yes, I know there are some tree diseases still out there, but I don't know. I certainly don't know specifically about the trees you're seeing. I haven't noticed that in my neighborhood.
They're all different. They're all different species. They're not one particular kind of tree or another. They're just all different species, and Most of them do not seem to be really large, old, healthy ones. They're more the middle, not the newer ones, young trees, but the middle, in between.
I'm just going to jump in. This is a problem that we were hearing about from Lydia Scott in our program, that there are the need for big older trees because they do much more for the environment and how we need to take care of them. So it's sad that somewhat middle sized, as you're describing, are coming down.
Yeah, that was a really good program with her.
Yeah.
That was very informative.
So an obvious one for me, and before I state it, would you please repost the items in the chat, because if you don't see anything that's been posted before you joined, I joined at 2:28 and the
Sure.
articles you referenced aren't there. Okay, great.
Okay.
For me, the obvious, one of the very in my face kinds of things is I'm not supposed to bring reusable bags to the grocery. And I was pretty cautious about it before. And now they don't want any of the bags so I've got a nice accumulation growing. And my Jewel won't take the plastic bags back now. So not only am I, using more, I don't know where to deliver them because Naperville's recycling doesn't take the bags.
Mariano's is taking them back.
Oh, thank you. Great. Perfect.
Yes. And Mariano's is also letting you bring in your own bags. They just want you to then take the items off of the for like a counter, whatever the right word is.
Yep.
Take the items and put them in the bag yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's one of my biggest bugaboos is I can't stand plastic. And so when all this COVID thing went down, I go to both Myers and I've gone to Valley's over in Glendale Heights, and they both said the same thing that Rick just did, is that you can bring your own. You just have to go to the bag your own lines, or they'll put the items, they'll give them right back to you. And you put them either in the basket and bag your own, or then bag them yourselves.
Okay, great. And that's just what my Jewel is doing. I don't know if the other Jewels are doing it, but it is, yeah.
Does anybody use the pickup? I use the pickup at Jewel, and they give you these different bags. They're thicker and much more sturdy. But then I have a stack of them. They work very well in your garbage container. If you have one of those rectangular garbage containers that's under the sink. If anyone wants any, I have zillions of them. I've been reusing them.
Then of course on a big picture, on a more of a big picture perspective, there's been a lot less driving and a lot less flying going on. And I suspect, at least on the driving, some of that will continue as we realize, I know with my firm, which is just a little small law firm, but we're never going back to, it's Monday through Friday. We normally go to the office. We've realized, why are we commuting? We can do everything from home when we're not in court. And I think and I've talked to other people, a lot of businesses are going to be like that. So in that sense, we've learned a lesson which will lessen, hopefully will lessen pollution at least some, and carbon emissions. But Mary had some thoughts about some of the better things that have happened.
Yeah, I will in just a minute, but before that, there's some new people that have joined us that might want to add, because we were talking about what effect this has had on us and the environment and nature and our concerns about the environment. And the walking outside, I walk anyway, but I've gotten to see a lot more of my neighbors. It was a nice way to connect with people I just because there were so many more people doing the walking. But a thing at the time was that Rabbi Koznowski started was the gardening, the victory gardens. And for a lot of us, I'm a gardener, but I'm a flower gardener. And so it was a learning process. I got 12-foot high corn. I didn't realize that probably I put too much manure in the land. But anyway, it grew really well and it tasted good. I'd never grown corn before. And for a lot of people, some of it, they grew in pots because they just had a patio, and other people were experts. And there was a lot of give and take back and forth and sort of a building of community. And I hope, and the idea was half was to be given to a food bank. And we were able to give some. I think that sometimes that proved difficult, but people shared with neighbors. So it was shared anyway, which was all a part of it. And it gave people a sense of accomplishment, which gardening always does, the connecting with nature, but just a peace, you know, it was very positive for a lot of people. So I think that we're all learning new things and learning about the environment. Did anybody else want to share something to that end of before we go on?
Well, just environmentally, just prior to the horrible wildfires that are continuing to consume up and down the West Coast, one of the things that people were talking about nationally is how clear the air has been without, you know, with fewer planes, fewer of everything. And now then we end up with smoke. But did everybody notice in their own backyards how much clearer the sky was?
Until the wildfires hit,
Yeah.
for sure.
And the the wildfires are of course, as being told by the experts, much worse because of climate change. And then the doctors are also telling us, of course, that any air pollution and the smoke is an especially acute example, is making it far more dangerous for anyone who does come down with the coronavirus because of the effects on our lungs. So you've got, there are relationships certainly between COVID-19 and our environmental situation. And smoke is one of the examples of how the environment is making COVID worse. We were just touching on how in some ways COVID has changed our behavior and made things a little bit better with regard to carbon emissions and our exercise. And
with that, that's such a good segue. I'm going to screen share because we've all seen some pictures, but I thought it might be interesting to see them again. And I'm going to go.
Excuse me, Mary, before you do that, can I just,
Okay.
for those who just joined, in the chat, I put in 2 articles which talk about how deforestation, which is of course a huge contributor to climate change, how that is also substantially behind our increasing risk of having pandemics like this, including coronavirus, deforestation, and loss of habitat. Those are in the chat, just for those who didn't hear me say that earlier. So.
Right, and also the link to the environmental page on Etzheim's website, which is found under Tikkun Olam also. So I'll just show some pictures.
Mary, while you're looking, can I interject something?
Sure.
There's another thing that just came up in the last week or so. I guess there's a new rule out of the federal government about opening up wild wilderness areas to logging. And it's going to open up a very large wilderness area in Alaska called the Tongass National Forest, which is one of the, it's like one of the top native areas, natural forests in the world. You know, it's obviously not as big as the Amazon, but it's up there. Millions of acres of old growth forest. And I don't know what's to be done. I understand it's a rule that has been proposed. It might be worth contacting your congressman about it.
Yeah, I think it's the world's, maybe the world's largest temperate rainforest.
Yes.
And I think we can expect that there'll be well, depending on how the election goes, this will be a moot point.
Right.
But I think we can also expect environmental groups, because have a history of doing this, they will try to legally challenge the new rule based upon the process and the rationality of it.
Mm-hmm.
Going forward.
Right, but the reason why I wanted to mention it was that not all the forests are in places like the Amazon. They're also in the U.S.
Are you seeing the slide that I have up here?
Yes.
Or-
Yes.
Yes,
But before Manila, before coronavirus, Manila in 2017.
Right, and I didn't want to cut it off, but I just wanted to be sure I got, let's continue that other discussion in a minute. We'll just look at these. So it's, I think that in the Philippines, it's the third worst pollution. And here it is in April. So our skies might be better, but worldwide it is amazing. Here is Los Angeles, and you can see the mountains and how clear it is after. So this just, I thought it was interesting to see this graphic from NASA, nitrogen dioxide. This was in the years before, and you can see in the areas where the major cities, how much greater the concentration and how much it's gone down. They said that, as you can read, research found that it was a 30% reduction, but in New York, in the state and the city of the carbon monoxide dropped 50%, and that was because of the traffic. And it's not just air pollution, it's also light pollution. So this is in Wuhan, and on the left, before the lockdown, and on the right after the lockdown, how much the differences that you can see that there's much less light pollution. And obviously this affects humans and it affects animals, especially in the urban areas. And then noise pollution. Although sometimes we say if a raccoon is out during the day, he's sick, but he also was able to forage without a problem because the people weren't around. A lot of research has been done, and animals in some cities, birds, were changing their songs because they didn't have to be so high or as loud, because there was less ambient traffic and all other kinds of noises. And I just found this funny. So this is in Ashkelon. Many of us that have gone to Israel get to go to Ashkelon, and there is a red fox right in the city, no longer being afraid. All right, whoops, and we'll get out. So can you get me out, Cody, please? I'm not quite sure how to get out. Okay, he's not here. All right, so thank you very much.
Thanks,
There you go, Mary.
So, you know, I think what Mary showed us raises the question of what we can do, whether it be individually or in some organized manner, to try to maintain some of this lessening of various forms of pollution. I just saw a news story that a couple of cities, including New Orleans, and I think there was Los Angeles also, are planning for the future to close off certain streets from traffic and have them just open to pedestrians and the bicycles, which it said is much more common in Europe.
Mhm.
But so it does raise the general question though, of can we, now that we've seen how some of these good effects from not doing what so many of us were accustomed to doing, can we keep any of these good effects going forward?
There are also some relatively simple things that can be done. Years and years ago, the city of Chicago set up corridors, and North Avenue was one, some of the boulevards were others, where a simple thing like timing the lights to the speed limit that would prevent people having to sit at stoplights idling their cars, creating more pollution. They would, if there was a 30-mile-an-hour limit and you were maintaining 30 miles an hour, you could go for miles and have nothing but green lights. Now, if you were the one that got stuck by the red, you weren't happy. But the idea of doing that in order to keep things moving, because when a car is moving, it's actually creating less pollution, and it saddens me that that did not get carried forward by other. Now, even Chicago stopped doing it, but it was a brilliant idea.
Can I interject, Harvey?
Sure.
Sure. One of the issues with something like that is you have different jurisdictions responsible for different roads. So if it's a county road, then the county is responsible for the signal timing. If it's a state highway, the state is responsible. So you have that, and then you also have the issues of emergency vehicles. And a lot of what you talk about was what has been adopted for emergency vehicles and for transit, where they have transmitters on the tops of the vehicle that can turn the light automatically so that they go green. So a lot of that technology has been implemented. And in fact, some of it is even not necessary if now we have vehicles that have engine off, no idling. So even, for an electric car, definitely it's not an issue, but even for an internal combustion engine vehicle, one of our cars, it turns itself off after so many seconds where the engine isn't running. So there's an idle off procedure. It's not a hybrid. It's just a regular internal combustion engine. And the hybrids are the other ones that also do that automatically. So that technology is great, and it has been implemented in certain places, but then it's also not necessary. It's increasingly less necessary with some of the vehicles that we have today.
What's funny about that is that I read several articles about it. You're right. A lot of cars do that. Mm-hmm. And they did it because they wanted to be able to increase their reported mileage.
Right.
It had nothing to do with pollution.
Right.
But at least there's a side benefit.
They were mandated to meet the fuel economy standards, and that's one technology they used. You're absolutely right.
Would you talk about the no idling signs that will go up?
Oh, yes. Do you want me to talk?
Sure.
Oh, okay. As part of the Environmental Task Force's application to, oh gosh, what's it called? Hazon. A grant was received, and under that grant, there are a number of initiatives that are being advanced, and one of them is to reduce engine idling, particularly by parents picking up their kids after religious school. And so there will be, I believe it's two signs that will be purchased and installed. It's kind of on the back burner now because people aren't coming to the temple, so there's not the sense of urgency. But it is something that is going to be happening. And I don't know, Mary, have those signs been ordered yet? Do you know?
I'm not sure. Rabbi Camel's doing it. He was busy this last week.
Yeah, so I obviously. So my understanding is that it's going to happen over the next few months. And they will be positioned so that the parents, as they circle through the parking lot to come around and pick up their kids, they will see those signs and hopefully obey them. And we'll see less of the pollution. And it's really a lot of the anti-idling work that's gone on, both here in Illinois and around the country. A lot of it has been in conjunction with school buses, because children are particularly at risk, because those school buses often idle when they pick up the kids after school, or even when they're picking them up before school. And so the idea of anti-idling, it's been a big thing among school buses. And you'll see a lot of those anti-idling signs, like the ones we're putting up at a time. You'll see them at a lot of schools nowadays.
And I think that there will be an effort also with Marla Friedman and the school to talk about this, because as a former environmental ed teacher, where kids came for 3 days and learned about the environment, things that we taught about recycling and such, we were doing as a big push to go home and have your parents do it. So we need to have pressure from family members to the parents that they'll go along with this.
I have a question, if I could, Mary, and also whoever was just speaking about that. What about people in the winter time who are indoors working or getting ready to leave work or doing whatever they're doing, and they have these, what do they call them, remote start things, so that they can, so that they can start up their cars and run them for 20 minutes so they're warm when they get into them. I mean, I don't think people realize that that's as good as idling, even if you're not sitting in the car.
Good point.
Nice though, but
Good point. Right.
Excellent point. People don't think about that. They just think, oh, I want to get into a nice warm car. But half the time they'll do it out into the parking lot. You know, they'll be at work and they'll warm up the car out in the parking lot at work. I agree.
All right. I was just going to also mention something that I forgot to at the beginning. People that have been members for a longer time may remember Charles Lewis, a blessed memory, who was a Temple member, and also he was the head of collections at Morton Arboretum. And he, in 1996, wrote a book called Green Nature and Human Nature. And I haven't found out if it is in our library, but if it isn't, I'm going to make sure that we get it at the Temple. And when we were talking about at the beginning about people getting out and being in nature, it's a wonderful book describing the psychological, sociological, and physiological responses for people in vegetation in the cities. And he did a lot of research about people needing that in cities and going to into forests also. And then it talks about the horticulture therapy programs. So I just thought it was interesting to mention that one of our Temple members wrote on this subject that I think many of us understand is important.
That kind of circles us back to something that we talked a little bit about at the beginning, which is, are we doing more things outside now, trying to, as we try to deal with the coronavirus and sheltering in place for most of the time?
I saw an interesting speaker over at College of DuPage last semester. If anybody was interested, I can dig out the information at a later date. But anyway, it was a woman who was doing forest walking, and it's kind of a combination of forest, like taking a stroll, and meditation. And I thought it was a very interesting concept. She had talked about this back before COVID, so I think it was relatively new. But I had never heard about it. We go out and play outside all the time, every day, all the time. So for people who've been in the city and never experienced the forest, I think it was a great thing for them to get out and experience nature.
Is it also called forest bathing?
Yes. Yes.
My
Yeah.
daughter was telling me about this. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting concept it is.
Mhm.
That also ties in with something else, which is this, and this also ties back to what the Environmental Task Force is going to be perhaps getting involved with in the future. And what I'm referencing is that, as Lydia Scott, for those of you who are on the program, heard, there's much less in the way of trees and tree canopy in the low-income urban areas. Obviously, certain areas in Chicago, South Side, some of the southeast suburbs, for example. And there have been studies which show that correlates with worse health and higher crime. And there's actually been studies, and of course this ties in with
It's part of environmental racism also.
environmental racism. Thanks. That was one of the phrases I was searching for there. Environmental racism. Yes. And there's even studies which show that when you significantly increase the parks or the tree canopy in those areas, crime actually goes down. Now, I don't know why. I speculate, and that's perhaps because people are truly less stressed, and there's less assault and battery going on. I don't know. I'm now speculating. But I wanted to raise this because we're going to be considering, as the task force moves forward, whether we should be trying to adopt a community or participate more in Lydia Scott's Chicago Tree Region Initiative efforts to get more trees planted in those types of areas. And I just wonder if anybody who hasn't been in the task force meetings, which is most of you, if you've got any feedback or reactions or thoughts about this.
My immediate reaction is that not so much that you'd be duplicating effort with what Lydia is doing, but that the groundwork that her efforts have already established and the knowledge that she brings to it may be better to support than to try and start from scratch.
We're supporting it. We're not starting from scratch.
I have a suggestion. Back some years ago, I took a tour of some communities on the southeast side. It was organized by the Southeast Environmental Task Force, and their focus is on brownfields and basically polluted sites where industry has moved out and left behind tracts of land that are basically contaminated in many cases. And it strikes me that would be a perfect marriage with the trees initiative, because it has been shown that some trees can actually clean up contaminated lands. They basically can neutralize the chemicals that are in the soil. And it might be worthwhile to talk to them. I guess I still get their emails, but I haven't talked to them in years. They're mostly, most of their activities have been organized around cleanup, and basically a lot of information about trying to stop some of the really negative industrial plans that were in place for those areas. As I recall, the Koch brothers had a big facility over there, and there was waste materials from coal burning that were being being housed there. Just really some pretty nasty things. We could certainly do it, yeah, talk to them some more, but that might be one thing that we might consider.
Brownfield sites, they're trying to do a lot of solar facilities on brownfield
Right.
sites.
Right, that's another one, because yeah, there's a lot of pavement that's been put in, they can put the solar panels above them. But trees is another thing that can also be done. I don't know that there's been much activity in that area, but you're absolutely right.
How many of you know that we have solar panels on our roof at Etzheim? Raise your hand if you know that. Okay, most of you do. It's something that we're going to remind people of with the money that we got for some signage at Etzheim. As inspiration to people. It seems to me I've seen a lot more solar panels going up on just people's homes in the area as I've been out walking and driving around recently.
Well, solar panels are becoming not only more efficient as the technology improves, but with that also less expensive. And we may get to the point where the panels that are on our roof now need to be, shall we say, upgraded to further improve the efficiency they bring.
Mary, for a while, we used to have posted in the lobby how much money we were saving back when we first, during the first couple of years of having the panels. And I know people aren't in the building anymore, but maybe every once in a while to put in the weekly news e-blast that goes out, something to that effect. It puts it back in people's minds, and especially the new congregants that don't even know we have, was it 140 of them up there? That's a lot.
That's very doable, and I could do that. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, and that's a very doable thing, and I just got a report about that last week, so thanks for that reminder. Can definitely add that into the email.
Yeah.
Depending on your electric consumption, people also put panels up in the parking lots to provide shade for cars and generate electricity. When I worked at a company down at Method with the wind turbine, they had that in their parking lot. They're cheap enough now, and if Biden wins, I have a feeling there'll be a lot more incentive for distributed solar, which may provide tax credits or investment credits for people to do that. So I hopefully next year at this time, that whole process will be much more economic.
Let me ask a question. Who's aware that, I'm not talking solar now, but who's aware that you can choose through Commonwealth Edison who actually supplies the electricity, which means that you can pick wind if you want to?
Well, I'd be cautious about that because you're not really picking anything. All you're doing is paying them to part of their power that comes from the wind farms, and the wind farms are already selling it to the market. Actually, a wind turbine, currently the industrial wind turbines or the utility size wind turbines are producing power and selling it at 2.3 cents a kilowatt hour. Edison's selling it to you at 9. They're making money on that. The only reason they don't like it, and they have no investment because it's all these other companies that are paying for the wind turbines. But Edison doesn't like it because they're worried about their nuclear plants because they're so costly to run. And so most of these things are kind of a hoax. Even the big corporations like Amazon and Facebook, they're buying these things called power purchase agreements. But all they're saying is, okay, we'll pay you a market rate for the power, but if you can sell it for more than we have, it never gets delivered to them. It just goes, it's kind of like saying one stream that goes into Lake Michigan is, and we take water out, you're getting water from that stream. No, you're not. It's all mixed together. So there's no
Right.
there's no way to separate it out.
That's right. You're not buying those electrons. You're just
Right.
buying the right to say that you supported it.
Right.
So
Well,
you
what
gotta
you're
be
buying
careful
is,
you don't get
buying-
hoaxed.
well, no, it's not a, it's, maybe I'm mistaken. Here's my understanding. No, the wind power is not coming directly to my house,
Right.
but it's going somewhere in the supply system. The wind power is being used rather than the regular electric power, which is better environmentally. It doesn't really matter for the environment whether I get it or somebody 12 miles away gets it.
Unfortunately, that's not true.
Well, wait, let me finish for a second, okay? Just let me finish. And I agree you have to be careful. There are companies which will, raise your rates out there that are wind companies. I found one though, I'll tell you, the last notice I got was they were telling me my rate was decreasing, and it was it is slightly more expensive than just not doing it. I mean, so slightly that it's meaningless, basically.
This is a discussion that's going on with the Environmental Task Force team. There's like 4 of us here. I want to see before the time is up, if there's any other issues that the rest of you who are here would think it would be important for us to take up as far as with climate change, the environment, as Jews concerned about being caretakers of the world.
Right, whether it interacts with coronavirus or not.
Right.
While we're here.
Does anyone else have any other issues that they're especially concerned about?
Globally, there's this kind of weird thing going on about doing things differently. A whole bunch of companies have discovered that people are more productive working from home than they were from the office. So now they're shedding office spaces, which reduces the commuting costs and all these other things. I don't know whether the temple needs to think about that for educating children or things like that, where parents are driving the kids to the school. So, I think that part of the world may be substantially, permanently changed because of the coronavirus. Not necessarily the coronavirus will continue. But Zoom works so well, it obviates some of the needs for that.
Dick, let me just speak as an educator. When everything is clear and people have the vaccine, 100% our kids need to be back in the building because they need it for socialization and to be with other Jewish kids. Our kids in the western suburbs, most of them are in schools with no other Jewish kids, and they need those personal relationships. So, for now, they're making it work doing the distant learning, but once it's safe for everybody to be back in the building, at least as far as kids are concerned, and I really feel for adults too, that we need to be back with our Hevra, our friends, and that's the only way that we can do it. It's going to be a while before any of that happens, but when it does happen, I think that is more important than the energy people use in their cars to get their kids to the temple.
I
Well, they may be
second that,
illegal.
and I think there are innovations that are taking place that will be meaningful, but that in itself, as far as community, Jewish community, is so important to our children and ourselves. And I know it's just about time for us to wrap up. And so I wanted to read to you from the Vidui for the 21st century. I saw this as we were going through our services today. It's on page 307, and I'm just going to read the end of it. We have violated the commandment, do not destroy. We have wasted precious treasures, our God-given gifts. We have exploited the weakest and most vulnerable in our midst. And yet we yearn to be better guardians of this earth in the fullness thereof. Let us be zealous now to care for this unique corner of the cosmos, this planet, our sacred home. So thank you
really
all
says
for
it. Thank you, Mary.
participating.
Yeah.
And a week from Monday, what is it, the 4th, at 4 o'clock of October, we're going to be having our next meeting. Help us shape what we're going to do. Contact me or Rick and we'll give you the link.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Good.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rick.
Thanks, you
Thank
guys.
you.
Shana Tova. Thank you.
Great discussion.
Bye.
Thanks. Shana Tova.